from WBBZ-TV Sports. It's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Zmozynski.
Hi, everybody. Week number 2 here at the Jamestown Bowling Company for Beat the Champ. I'm Paul Peck with Hall of Fame bowlers Sue Zmozynski and Janelle Sabin. Much like the Comedy Center just up the road from here, been a lot of laughs here from week number 1, but they've not been the fun laughs. They've been the frustrating laughs because we saw some real ups and downs in week number 1, and Joe Rubrecht, our returning champion, is going to try to even all that out.
Right, and he made some really strong decisions, and he was the one that prevailed because he kept working at it and made the right decisions. But he's come up against a strong competition today with Chuck Jagodzinski, who is quick on his feet because he sees it all the time, and Pete Zmozynski, who
Chuck's already 5 frames into the match.
He's speeding up right over there.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course Chuck is our number 2 in wins, number 2 in appearances, one of the best bowlers in Western New York, one of the best bowlers we've ever had on the show. So he's right off the bat. And then you've got a guy in Pete Zmozynski who is a great bowler but hasn't been on this show before.
Right, which is kind of cool. We're 4 years in and still getting some of the stronger talent in Buffalo coming out for their first time. And great resume, great list of accomplishments, first time on the show, gonna be impressed.
And Len Marucci of Jamestown bowler is our 3rd bowler. So Joe Rubrecht's gonna have his work cut out for him, Janelle, to keep his name on the Castellan scoreboard.
Yeah, and it'll be something to see if these guys can make the adjustments and what they'll have to do to come up on top.
Yeah, the adjustments have been key here through the first 3 matches. We'll see if it continues. We are ready to go. Jamestown Bowling Company for Beat the Champ. Oh, let's get rolling. So it's Jagodzinski and Rubric to get things started here, week number 2 at the Jamestown Bowling Company, and the always entertaining and fun to watch Chuck Jagodzinski gets us started. And don't blink, because if you blink, you'll miss 3 frames.
Well, just judging from watching the warm-ups before this, I don't know that I think that either guy is totally secure with their ball reaction here.
Well,
so.
Clearly Joe talked to us about that, how he just never felt great in winning those 2 matches, and good for him that he was able to gut out 2 wins. And as I mentioned at the end of the last show, and at the beginning here was, the score should be better. The bowling should be quote unquote easier. That's what Jimmy believes, but for whatever reason, guys are struggling a little bit, and I think Joe will be the first to tell you that he didn't so much as win his 2 matches, he survived the first 2 matches.
Well, sometimes it's a grind.
There's no question it's a grind. So let's see what happens. Chuck Jagodzinski spare in the first frame. Here is Joe Rubrecht from right here in Jamestown, a Buffalo native who has moved down here for a job opportunity. But this is kind of home, and boy, that 10-pin did a little spin there, but not enough to go down.
That was a good shot.
5th appearance on our show for Joe Rubrecht. He has won 3 and lost 2. He's riding a 2-match winning streak as we come into this one. It's the 3rd straight month that we've had Joe on the show. We had him in Fredonia, and then he qualified to move to Transit, then he bowled at Transit, and then he was the number 1 qualifier here, number 2 qualifier here at Jamestown for the 3rd straight month.
And as we talked a little bit of Transit, he had just come back to bowling, just doesn't bowl league. We talked about that earlier.
And that's really interesting, honestly. I mean, him being on this show 3 months in a row is as serious regular bowling as he's gotten, because he doesn't bowl in a league. Job, family, coaches his daughter's softball, all those things have sort of taken time away from him being a league bowler, which I think at times, and you would think going into a match with a guy like Chuck, puts him at a disadvantage.
Well, he's been bowling good 3 months in a row. His game's in a good spot.
What was most interesting about Joe's performance on last week's show is he survived a bunch of open frames. He won 1 match with 3 open frames. He won that over Dan Maladona, 184 to 180, and then he winds up with 2 open frames, but finishes with 6 consecutive strikes to beat Andy Blaisdell, 222 to 190. So to his credit, he hasn't let those open frames kind of get him down.
Well, even though Dan came in as the defending champion, I mean, Joe didn't face a whole lot of experience last week. almost the most experience here with Chuck Jagodzinski. So it'll be interesting to see whether Chuck can figure these out, because he should be the consummate grinder.
There's a strike in the second frame. 29th appearance on Beat the Champ for Chuck Jagodzinski. 31 wins, 16 losses. He is number 2 to Mike Zarcone in wins, losses, and show appearances. Those guys were tied for wins a couple of months ago, and Mike went on a little bit of a run. I believe in Fredonia he did that. So Chuck is still playing a little catch-up, and nothing probably is more on the top of Chuck's mind than that. 2 strikes in a row for Chuck Jagodzinski. So the difference in a match like this, Sue, to me, is because he's bowling Chuck, Joe might not have that margin for error that he has been able to overcome in the wins over Dan Meladon and Andy Blaisdell.
Exactly. You're most likely not gonna see 2 holes, two opens in the game.
Chuck won't let you win with
right.
2 opens.
Right.
He won't do it. He's too good. So you're gonna need a lot more of those. And as I mentioned, Joe ending with 6 consecutive strikes in his win last week over Andy Blaisdell. And that was incredibly impressive because he had been struggling a bit to figure the lanes out, and that was the key to his victory is that run that he put on towards the end.
Well, Chuck's playing them a little bit more the way Jim Mee had mentioned when we talked to Jim Mee last week, and how he sees this house normally play. And Chuck's in that spot. The guys all along were not playing them the same way. You can see Chuck further to the right, and the whole right to left thing. And we'll see if that makes it more consistent.
The lucky late fall there to avoid a 7-10 for Joe Rubrecht. Joe is 33 years old. I mentioned he lives down here in Jamestown, works at the Cummins engine plant, and that job opportunity is what made him move down here from Buffalo. So he's got a Buffalo base of friends and bowlers, and then he's got now his new Jamestown group, and he does bowl here whenever he can at the Jamestown Bowling Company. He's been bowling for over 40 years and has some really nice accomplishments in his bowling career.
This feels like a good time to take a Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
I see Joe opted to have Chuck start the match. There's some logic to that he wanted to be able to come up and dictate the finish if he needed to.
3 in a row for Chuck Jagodzinski, who's breaking out a new bowling ball for this show, which is always interesting for a guy who bowls at the high level that he bowls. There's always you want to mess with success a little bit.
Well, no, we love to get our new nuggets. New nuggets are fun. There's nothing like a fresh bowling ball.
Well, and then I was going to say he also had some work done on the very famous Chuck Jagodzinski boxing glove knockout punch spare ball, which we will see here for the second time. Josh Nowak did a little work on that one for him to shine it up and even it up. So Chuck can't grab that spare, so it'll be an open in the 5th for Jagodzinski, unable to bring down the split.
Well, Chuck got a little introduction to what the other guys have been dealing with, which is just a slightly high hit, which could be a strike, could be a 4-pin, but rarely a 4-10. We saw that, early in one of the last matches.
The second 4-10 we've had here.
Yeah, and that's not a normal leave. That's not that common.
You saw Janelle Sabin manning the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard from here at the Jamestown Bowling Company, keeping us up to date. 5th frame now for Joe Rubrecht. Oh, he was willing that one down the lane.
That's because a double here makes this match even. That's how fast this turns around.
Yep, the open in the 5th opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 spares and 2 strikes in the first half of this match for Joe Rubrecht. He had a 300 game in the top 24 qualifying here. As we mentioned, he was the number 2 qualifier coming into our month here in Jamestown, but that 300 game was certainly exciting and special for Joe. I believe that's over 60 career 300 games for Joe. We'll move over to the left there. We've seen,
Taking his time on this one.
yeah, setting himself up.
Did it again.
Yeah, kind of ran out of steam there at the
I
end
missed to the
again.
right. He's trying to grab that dry to get the ball to hit harder, but if you scoot it outside of that area, it's just too many boards to cover. He's getting it almost to the gutter. He does not want to get it that far to the right. His target is more around the 5 boards, 5, 6 boards, and it's going to come light and leave something difficult to make every time.
This is another unusual split, isn't it?
This one's makeable. No? Okay.
Almost. That was the 210, correct?
Yep.
So we had 4 10s and 2 10s, and Joe comes close, but now Joe evens up with Chuck on the open frame category. So here comes Chuck now, 6th frame.
Great
There's
job.
a strike. Chuck may be number 2 overall in victories, but at least when it comes to 2019, he is number 1. 10 wins in the calendar year against only 3 losses. That is well ahead of Mike Zarcone. We know these 2 guys are sort of linked at the hip here when it comes to this show.
Yeah,
so
that's quite impressive.
Chuck had a 300 at the Rapids Bowling Center this year. So it's been a good start to 2019 for Chuck Jagodzinski. And as Chuck's wife Michelle pointed out, one of his first real sort of big performances on this show came here at the Jamestown Bowling Company in 2016 when he rattled off 5 wins in a row.
Yep,
to
I
make
remember.
his trip down here to Jamestown certainly worth it back then.
Yep, there was no looking back after that, was there?
Nope. Good strike for Joe Rubrecht in the
Yeah.
7th frame.
He's finding himself in must strike situations now. He's 30 pins down. And just, that's one frame. One frame makes such a difference. He could have been even in the match and misses target to the right and now finds himself down 30.
Yeah, and again, even though Chuck had it open as well too, he had put 3 strikes on the board before that, so he was able to overcome or not have it affect as much as
Right.
you know because Joe had not been quite that good through the first half of the match.
And that was an unfortunate leave. That could easily have been just a 4 pin. So it was just one of those bad breaks. There wasn't really a bad shot.
So 8th frame now. Joe probably needs as many strikes as he can get.
Yeah, he needs them all now.
Yep, that message not delivered to the 10 pin.
No,
That one
ball's
hurts.
going a little long for him. He was a little closer to his target there, but ball's just going a little bit long, coming in a little bit late, ringing around that 10.
Chuck, you have nicknames for these things now?
Fredonia hang shot.
All right, so a spare in the 8th for Joe. Here's Chuck, 2 in a row, looking for the triple, looking for the knockout punch. Got
Really
it.
like that.
I think we've seen Chuck bowl enough to know that when he gets down in that sort of bends his knees and spreads out, waiting for the pins to go down, that usually means he feels good. Let's see if we see it here again in the 9th frame. Yeah, see, he didn't like it quite that much. See, everybody at home can't see this because they're watching the pins go down. You can watch Chuck's reaction after he throws it, and we don't even have to see the pins necessarily to know what's going to happen. There's the fancy new spare ball doing its job. ninth frame, and Chuck Jagodzinski has clinched himself a victory. So a good effort by Joe Rubrecht, but just too tough a competitor this time. And Chuck Jagodzinski, who's had a lot of success here in Jamestown, is set to start maybe another streak. He gets the win. We'll come back, wrap this matchup, get you ready for match number 2. Sue and I and Janelle Sabin return to Jamestown right after this. Well, Joe, you've been good through the first 2 wins here of overcoming a bad frame or a bad ball or whatever. It's a little harder to do that when you're bowling against a guy like Chuck Jagodzinski. Did that kind of cost you this match?
No, because I don't really want to bowl against my opponent. I bowl against the lane, so my goal is to beat the lane. If I strike, I win. If I don't, I lose. So the opponent it doesn't matter who it is. So my main focus is to bowl the lane. I learned that a long time ago.
Right.
So my opponent doesn't matter who it is. So that's irrelevant.
All right. Well, I know what is relevant. Jim's got a little money for you.
Joe, you had a good outing.
Thanks.
Great bowling, as always, and a little something to make you feel better.
Well, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
And we're not done with Joe yet, because we're going to see him in a couple of weeks on our 4th show, the doubles competition from here at Jamestown. So don't go anywhere. We're going to get him back. We got match number 2 coming up next on Beat the Champ. So this is one of our most anticipated matches we've ever had here on Beat the Champ. Chuck Jagodzinski, one of the best in town, against Pete Zmozynski, who is one of the best in town that we have not had yet on our show. And I think Chuck knows that he's in a big one here because he starts off with a strike.
Right, and that's a little bit of the tougher lane, that 17, and that's going to be the challenge. It goes a little bit longer, causes them a little bit of grief. Just that tiny little bit can cause those 10 pins.
All right, so here,
great shot.
Pete Zmozynski from Depew, 40 years old. Again, an outstanding bowler. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about how good he is, but for various reasons, he just has not been on the show. So this is his Beat the Champ debut, but anybody that bowls in Western New York knows how good this guy is.
Yeah, he's really good. He's got a great hand. I mean, that's great ball rotation. When you see it come off his hand there at the bottom of the swing, his fingers are still behind it, yet he gets really good revolutions on it. And normally his carry will be excellent. Of course, his first shot there, he got bad result, good spare. I intend to see these guys push each other pretty well.
Yeah, so Pete Zmozynski, who bowls all over Western New York, has a 249 average. I think it's the highest number we've seen by any bowler on the show. He's a former Buffalo Double City title overall winner, all events title winner, won championships in Niagara Falls, 2017, 2018, Buffalo Bowler of the Year, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit about his achievements at Nationals last year. But, again, just because he hasn't been on the show, it doesn't mean anything. He is one of the best guys in town, and I think ultimately what he told us was his coworkers at the Wendy Correctional Facility kept bugging him, like, how come you're not on the show? You're good, you keep telling us you're good, how come we don't see you on the show?
Right.
So finally things fell in place and he was able to qualify down here at Jamestown.
Yeah, I even asked him when I saw him, there's definitely a strong pocket of bowlers that we still have not seen on the show. So it's nice that we're getting to creep in here now and then to showcase a few more other people. But we'll talk a little bit more about his 300 when we see him again. Great shot there by Chuck.
2 strikes in a row to start off with. Chuck Jagodzinski just got his 32nd Beat the Champ victory with that 30 pin win over Joe Rubrecht. So he's sneaking up on Mike Zarcone for our overall lead in wins. Mike has 34, Chuck has 32. I'm sure Chuck would love to rattle off a whole bunch in a row here. He's done that before here at Jamestown.
You know he would.
3 in a row for Mr. Jagodzinski. What is he yelling? What is he yelling now?
Timber.
Oh, you know Chuck's feeling it when he's providing his own sound effects.
So I think Chuck's wife mentioned that these two were doubles partners at one time for quite a long period of time. So they seem like there's a lot of interaction going on. Yeah. A couple laps going on between the two of them.
Both corrections officers as well. So We'll see who lays down the law in this match. Chuck's a corrections officer at Attica. Pete, as I mentioned, at the Wendy Correctional Facility. So, and again, there's no doubt that these two guys, as good as they are, have bowled against and with each other for a long time around Western New York. And here they are on TV matching it up. You got an early look at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard from Janelle Sabin. 3 spares to start off with Pete Zmozynski and 3 strikes for Chuck Jagodzinski. And Pete will be the first to tell you he's not going to win unless he starts striking.
Well, these lanes are a little bit different, and Chuck has the advantage of having been on this pair already, so he already kind of knows the little nuances going on. And one of the things, if one lane's a little different than other, you got to make sure you don't make an adjustment on one lane based on what just happened on the other. Wow.
There's
great
the first
shot.
strike from Pete Zmozynski. So Chuck Jagodzinski, who somehow, I don't know how he finds time to be on the show when he bowls in leagues 5 nights a week.
Leagues are over now.
That's true, you're right. 2-time Buffalo Bowler of the Year, Tri-City Masters Champ 2016, 4 titles in the Buffalo City Tournament. Chuck has done it all in Western New York, and he has been a fun guy, and really a part of the story of this show being back in its 4th year has been the personality and outstanding bowling by Chuck Jagodzinski, who's perfect through the first 5 frames.
And 32 wins on Beat the Champ. Don't forget about that one.
Oh, of course, I won't.
This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. So one of Pete's accomplishments is shooting a 300 in the national tournament, which always tends to be one of the most difficult scoring patterns out there. And I know I bowled on it in Syracuse, and I thought they were literally impossible. And he shot 300 on that, and what an accomplishment that is.
That's one of those things that people will talk about, that you'll forever, no matter how many years you bowl, people will always kind of come back to an achievement like that. Won't they?
Right.
You're the guy that bowled the 300 in the Nationals.
Right, and honestly, those lane conditions are as challenging as it gets. And
that was one of his 54 career 300 games, that 300 he bowled in the Nationals last summer.
One thing about the men's national tournament is they build those lanes for the tournament. So those lanes are shipped in. They're not like this on a steady foundation.
That one took a big turn right at the end and got him a little bit away from the pocket, and that's why you see the split that is left.
That lane is tricky. That goes from coming up a little bit light to a 410, in this case, a 4-9 combination. But we've seen this where it's come up just a little bit high and it leaves the split instead of just leaving the 4-pin.
All right, so it's an open for Pete Zmozynski in the 6th frame, and never good when you're bowling against Chuck, and B, Chuck is perfect through the first 5.
Right.
Six in a row for Chuck Jagodzinski, who threw one of our 5 300 games here on Beat the Champ in our 3+ years. That happened in January up at the Rapids Bowling Center. We also have had one here before in Jamestown. Paul Geiger did that last year when he bowled the 300 game here at Jamestown. And that will not happen in this match for Chuck.
Oh, Greek church.
What happened there? Oh, we have a Greek church. Love the Greek church.
This one's hard to make.
So each guy with an open in the last couple of frames here, and that evens it up and gives Pete Zmozynski a lot better chance to get himself back in this one. So Chuck opens with 6 straight strikes, and then the open. Now here's Pete in the 7th frame. Perfect
Nice
shot.
Yep, he needs every one of them now.
And there you get a look at the updated scoreboard. As you can see, boy, the scoreboards have really told the story through our first 5 matches here in Jamestown. They've been all over the place, ups and downs, opens and spares, and no one's been able to really run a lot of strikes in a row, except a couple like Joe Rubrecht ran a couple in a row late in matches in order to win a few. But strikes have been a little harder to come by than maybe we would have expected.
Yeah, they have, and this lane 17 has been so tricky. That's going to be the nemesis for the day, I think, going on there.
Both guys using 15-pound balls, where we talked a little bit about that on last month's show. It's something we're going to try to make sure that everybody at home sort of understands the equipment that everyone is using here. Spare in the 8th for Pete Zmozynski.
Yeah, and you don't see as many 16-pound people that throw 16 pounds anymore. I mean, people still do, but 15 has definitely become a more universal weight because of the hitting power of the equipment. You don't need to put the strain on your body for that extra pound.
So Chuck bounces back from the open with a strike in the 8th, so it's been strikes all the way, except for that open in the 7th frame with the Greek church from Chuck Jagodzinski. And yet another one. And with that strike in frame number 9, it's a win for Chuck Jagodzinski, his 2nd in a row, 33rd overall here on Beat the Champ. So not the debut that Pete Zmozynski would be hoping for, but again, hopefully this is a guy that we see a lot more of on the show, because the more we see him, the more we're going to see that.
This is true. Great bowler.
So Chuck Jagodzinski gets the win. He'll try to sweep the week in our next match. We'll get you ready for that when Sue and I return to the Jamestown Bowling Company here on Beat the Champ. Two wins in a row now for Chuck Jagodzinski, 260 to 202 over Pete Zmozynski. I asked Joe Rubrecht in the last match, and he says, I don't worry about my opponent. I don't bowl against my opponent. But when you know you're going up against Chuck and he starts off with 5 consecutive strikes, how does it not affect how you're approaching your game?
It does, but I've known Chuck for a long time. We bowled doubles and nationals together, so I know his game, and when Chuck's on fire, he's hard to beat.
So it's nice to finally get you on the show. So take us, how'd your first, other than obviously you didn't win, but finally getting yourself on the show, getting all those coworkers of yours at Wendy off your back a little bit?
Yeah, they've been asking me, like, oh, you're a bowler, how come you're not on TV? And I'm like, all right, one of the, I'm finally off, I'll do it. All right, I have the feeling we're going to see a lot more of Pete. As good as he is, we're going to see him a lot more on this show. Jim?
Pete, thanks a lot for coming out.
Thanks,
And I know you're tired today because you worked a double, so get some sleep. Maybe that'll make you feel better.
Thanks, bro.
Okay,
There you go.
Thanks.
Either that or get him some coffee for the ride home. Chuck Jagodzinski going to try to sweep the week. 3 in a row. Will he get it? We'll find out. Stick around. More Beat the Champ right after this. Third match of the day is Chuck Jagodzinski goes for his 3rd consecutive victory. His opponent, we'll talk about him more in a moment, from right here in Jamestown is Len Marucci, but it's Chuck Jagodzinski to get things started. 235 and 260 in the first 2 matches of the day, and lots of strikes, and there's another one.
Well, you mentioned the first week, Jim. We're joined by Jimmy, the owner of the bowling center, that you thought they were playing the lanes a little bit wrong, and Chuck has come in and played them just the way you mentioned, and so far posted the highest scores that we've had and been pretty consistent to the pocket. So yes, you were right.
Well, it kind of falls in his wheelhouse too, but that's his comfort zone, and and he's got the kind of rev rate that will get down the lane from even the driver part of the lane. So, and he's taking advantage of it, obviously.
Right.
You see, Len Marucci is our first 2-handed bowler of our trip down here to Jamestown. He's from right here in Jamestown, 30 years old, engineering technician is his profession. And Jim, he's a guy you know very well. He's a regular here at the leagues here at Jamestown. Tell us what we need to know about Lenny.
Yeah, Lenny went to 2 hands a couple years ago when he had an injury, and he just doesn't have the strength to consistently throw. I mean, he shoots his 10 pins one-handed, but to bowl 3 games like that, he just can't do it anymore. So he's gone to that. He's, for a fairly new two-handed bowler, he's got, some decent control. And
only doing it for a couple of years, I think, as you said, right?
Yeah.
Only 2 years since the shift. And we've talked about this before, that he's not the first guy that we've had on this show that has been, due to injury, had to change from regular one-handed bowling to two-handed. Is there something about the style, and you hear the groans because you can see why. Is there something about that makes it easier to make that shift to the two-hander? Or, I mean, to think 2 years after making that change to have Lenny bowling the way he's bowling is pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something you got to work at. I mean, I'm too old to change, but but if you're younger and
so is Sue. That's what she says, right?
It just looks like it would be hard on your body, the twisting, but yet they've made transitions to it. Amazing. I think Chris Labiak is another one who changed.
He's one of the ones
an
coming
injury.
by, yeah. So yeah, Chris is one of the ones that comes to mind who's had to change because of an injury, and I give us an idea of how sort of traumatic or dramatic that is to have bowled one way all your life, and then all of a sudden you got no choice but to do something completely different.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be quite an adjustment period. But if you in a lot of practice, and you probably you got to drill your equipment different.
Do you think if you had to, in order to keep bowling, change hands and bowl right-handed or two-handed, which you would lean towards? Which is more difficult?
I'd probably go to two-handed, actually.
That's what I think too. I think that it would be harder for me to switch to be a left-hander.
I mean, even though it's kind of weird because I am ambidextrous, but I've tried bowling right-handed. It's just I can't do it. I mean, it's one of those just athletically. I'm a lefty. That's all there is to it.
Well, you can see Lenny's having a little trouble with those 10 pins. He's got the pins flying everywhere but where they need to go to knock down that 10 pin. Meanwhile, Chuck Jagodzinski, much like he did in the last match, starting with strikes 3 in a row to open things up, as you can see on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. So, and let's be honest, and Pete Zmozynski said it, there's a little intimidation factor. Oh my gosh, I'm bowling against Chuck, and he started off with a whole bunch of strikes, and I didn't, so now there's a little panic that sets in.
Well, in a one-game match, you can only change so much without just throwing everything to the wind and going a whole different direction. And you really don't normally do that. You normally grind it out with what you got. And if somebody has the ball reaction you see Chuck have, he's got the angle of entry to the pocket that's going to create better carry. When you're going away from the pocket, see, now that one he kept more inside, and truthfully, when Joe Rubrecht did that too, I was surprised he changed and went back to open it up like that, because this is the better carry, entry into the pocket, whatever. But he just got that right to left thing going on that's better for carry.
Yeah, it's simple, and he makes it look easy, and he jumps out in front like right away, and you're in big trouble. Like,
yeah, I think that you perfectly described it, Jim. That's why Chuck now has a chance with this match to tie Mike Zarcone for the most wins here on Beat the Champ, just because he knows, not only does he know how to bowl, he knows how to sort of, and this sounds funny for me to say, he knows how to win, right? And part of that is what you talked about, coming out strong, putting your opponent behind the 8 ball already early, getting them thinking, getting them panicking, making changes while he just keeps cruising along and knocking pins down.
That's impressive.
Len Marucci, obviously debut here on the show for Lenny. But as we also mentioned, from Jamestown here, bowls in your Thursday Scratch Doubles League here. How good's the competition in that Thursday league? Bertie had 2 of your bowlers on our show here today.
No, it's good. It's full too. We have 24 teams of doubles, and I actually bowl in that league with my daughter, so that's kind of nice.
Wow.
We have fun. We didn't win it, but it's a split season. We finished 3rd and 6th, so Not bad though.
No.
No, she's not quite as good as Chad, but she averaged like 215. So
Wow. Excellent.
You passed some good bowling genes on there, didn't you?
I guess.
Does she live here in Jamestown?
Yeah, she works for me.
Ah. That's one way to keep an eye on her dad.
3 in a row
And
for
vice
Len
versa.
Marucci.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
So here we are at this point in the year now where you said your leagues have died down a little bit and things get a little quiet here, but at least around the area of Jamestown is kind of now when things start perking up a little bit. Chautauqua Lake and all the fun that comes there, and then you've got the National Comedy Center with the big festival that comes up in August. So is there a different feel, a different vibe down here in Jamestown than maybe the last time we were here?
Oh yeah, definitely. We have a lot of people visiting Jamestown because of the Comedy Center, and of course, Chautauqua Institution will be opening up, and there's just a lot more going on. We have a lot of restaurants opening. Microbreweries are still being built, so it's pretty cool.
So you've seen development that has come to Jamestown, particularly the downtown area, probably triggered a lot by what the Comedy Center is bringing and the people that it's bringing in?
Oh, for sure. I was reading an article in the paper last week that there's been somebody to actually come to the Comedy Center now from all 50 states.
That's great.
So
Wow.
that's pretty good for a new, facility.
Mm-hmm.
7th frame for Len Marucci. The National Comedy Fest, or the Comedy Festival, the annual Comedy Festival here August 7th to 11th. Down here in the Jamestown area, some really good headliners. There may not be anybody funnier in the world right now than John Mulaney.
I know, we were talking about
He's
that.
got 2 shows. Sebastian Maniscalco is an incredibly popular comedian. Both of them are going to play the Northwest Arena here in Jamestown, so it's going to be rocking down here in August. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. I've had a chance to see John Mulaney in concert. He is amazingly funny. So if you're down here in this area, or you want to make a little trip down here in the area, come hang out with Jim the night before, and then go watch one of the 2 shows from John here in Jamestown, and certainly check out the National Comedy Center. A lot of good stuff going on in Jamestown. Yeah, that tricky 10-pin continues to plague Lenny, along with 6 strikes and 6 frames for Chuck Jagodzinski. That's tough. You're asking a lot. You're asking a lot from 2 guys back to back, and as good as Pete Zmozynski is, first time on the show, bowling against Chuck. Same thing for Lenny. That's a tall task.
Nope.
He's throwing it good though. He's making all his spares, but
Yes,
He
is.
made a good little adjustment there, and lane 17 has been a little bit questionable on carry. And,
I think it's gotten a little tighter down lane
Yep, a little tighter
than
down
18.
lane.
Although where he's playing, it's not really affecting him as much because he's going around it.
Right.
7 frames, 7 strikes for Chuck Jagodzinski. He started the last match with 6 in a row before he went open in the 7th, so he's already surpassed that, has Chuck Jagodzinski, and he really seems to be in a typical Jag groove right now, doesn't
Yep,
he?
wasting no time. That went a little bit further up the boards. He didn't get it going as much right to left as he has in the past.
So it won't be, for the moment, a second Beat the Champ perfect game for Chuck Jagodzinski, but there are potentially more matches to come. So the spare is good for Chuck in the 8th frame, and that means he is on his way to yet another victory. So it's going to be a sweep of the week for Chuck Jagodzinski, 3 in a row, and then it also gives Chuck a tie with Mike Zarcone for most wins. And the first thing Chuck is probably going to do after this match is over is get on the phone and call Zarcone and let him know, right?
I know that Chuck's going to
Or
be
maybe
happy
his wife
about it.
Michelle will take care of that. But there's a great rivalry between these 2 guys, which is what I'm sort of referring to. And I think they both battle each other over. And now Chuck's got a chance to take that lead. So we'll talk to Chuck, and we'll talk to Lenny, and we'll get you ready for what should be a fun 3rd week here at Jim Mee's Jamestown Bowling Company. 279 to 214 as Chuck Jagodzinski sweeps the week and gets his third consecutive win. Jimmy just used the word buzzsaw, and that's pretty accurate to describe having a bowl against Chuck, right, Lenny?
Oh yeah, Chuck. I mean, he bowled good. Qualifying, he threw the ball great today. It's tough to beat 279. I'm happy I threw the ball pretty good. Should have made a ball change, but when Chuck's locked in, better get out of the way, 'cause he's coming through one way or the other.
When Chuck's locked in, better get out of the way. I think we need T-shirts with that to get this to have it say that, Jim.
And you're totally right about that. I wouldn't want to bowl him right now, and it's my house, so I don't think I'd have a chance. So.
Make Lenny feel a little better there, Jim.
Good bowling, buddy. Here's a little something for you. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, you can't get out of the way of Chuck Jagodzinski.
Chuck, we noticed you got a new bowling ball, a new Halo Pearl, but you didn't qualify with that ball, so you made the show without that ball. What made you go drill another one after you qualified?
Because I know a lot of times here is very tight, so I went to Josh Nowak and he gave me this ball. I said, give me something a little stronger than my other pearlized ball because I'm throwing it way too slow than I normally throw it.
Oh, so it's about the ball speed.
Yeah, I like to throw it like 17 and a half, and I've been throwing like 16 and a half, and I feel like I'm 80 years old up there.
All right, well, no knock to the 80-year-olds. I'm getting closer to that. But great job picking a new ball and, coming out here and putting on that great performance. So good luck going forward.
Thank you.
All right, Chuck now tied with Mike Zarcone for the most Beat the Champ wins. We'll have a chance to break that tie when he comes back on next week's show. We'll get you ready for next week when Sue and I return to Jamestown right after this. The legend of Chuck Jagodzinski continues to grow. I just couldn't help but laugh when Jim Mee said he would call them a buzzsaw, and then Lenny said when Chuck's bowling well, get out of the way. But it's true. He is so good and so fun to watch. And when he is locked in, what do you got to do? Get a bowl 280 to beat him?
I know, and he knew he had it. And, asking him if he had a different bowling ball drilled after he made the show, that's kind of amazing because he already knew he could bowl good with the other one. And yet he knew he was locked in, the body language that you talk about. He's going to be tough if that keeps up.
And to your point, he knew he needed a new ball, or he wanted one, because he's bowled here enough to know what the conditions were that he needed to compensate for those conditions. And again, it's the mental part of the game that makes guys like Chuck as great as they are.
It is, and technology is important too, and understanding that aspect of the game only makes a bowler better, and he proves that he has that too.
All right, so it's 3 in a row for Chuck. Got a chance to break the tie for the most wins. Got a chance to keep that winning streak going. We've got 3 more bowlers ready to go at him again for next week's show, Janelle.
Yeah, and you'll have to stick around to find out.
There you go. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We've got a good chance Chuck's going to keep winning, but we'll find out when we all return to Jamestown. We'll see you next week.